The ship was dead. It drifted in the void like the carcass of some ancient leviathan, its massive hull scored with burns, its jagged wounds still visible after centuries. The stars reflected off its pitted armor like the glint of teeth on a rotting skull. It did not belong here, not in the quiet orbit of Saturn's moons. It belonged on a battlefield, shattered and forgotten. Yet here it was, tethered in place by tow drones, a gift from the Galactic Council. Admiral Thomas Kane stood motionless on the observation deck of the USS Perseverance, hands clasped behind his back, jaw set like stone. Through the viewport, the derelict ship loomed so close it seemed it might swallow the Perseverance whole. "Admiral," said Commander Elise Harper quietly, her voice breaking the heavy silence. "Docking clamps are locked. The Council delegation has withdrawn to safe distance." Kane didn't answer right away. His eyes tracked the alien ship's slow rotation, as if he were staring at a predator waiting for it to move. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, measured. "This isn't a gift," he said. Harper glanced at him. "Then what is it?" "A message," Kane replied. She frowned, turning back toward the viewport. "You think it's a warning?" Kane's expression didn't change. "It's a grave marker. And they expect us to be grateful for it." 10 years had passed since the Siege of Sol, when humanity's fleets had been shattered and its leaders forced to surrender unconditionally. The Council's fleets had circled Earth like wolves, their warships blotting out the sky. Humanity was allowed to live only because extinction, the Council said, would have been wasteful. In the decades since, the once proud Terran fleet had been dismantled. Shipyards were stripped, colonies handed over to alien administrators, and every Earth-built warship was cut apart for scrap. Humanity was left with nothing save for the Perseverance, a single orbital defense cruiser allowed to remain in service as a peacekeeping vessel under strict supervision. And now, the Council had delivered this. A derelict alien warship, stripped of weapons, power, and dignity, towed across half the galaxy and presented to humanity like a trophy. Kane could still hear the voice of the Council envoy, slick and smug, as the gift was announced. "May this relic remind your species of both the cost of defiance and the mercy you were shown." Mercy. Kane's lip curled at the word. He had seen what the Council called mercy, entire colonies starved into submission, resistance leaders executed on live broadcast, Earth forced to pay tribute in resources it could barely spare. No. This was not mercy. This was a leash. Boarding teams were already moving across the docking bridges, their mag boots clanking against the holodecks. The alien ship's interior was cold and silent, a tomb of echoing corridors built for a species far taller and thinner than humans. When Kane stepped aboard, the air tasted stale, metallic, faintly bitter. The ship smelled like something that had been left to die. "Interior pressure stable," reported Harper, her breath misting in the frigid air. "Minimal life support. No automated defenses detected." Kane's boots rang against the deck plates as he moved through the corridor, his gloved hand brushing along the wall. The metal was pitted and rough under his touch, as if the ship itself had been burned and abandoned. In the command chamber, alien glyphs glowed faintly on the consoles, their light dim and pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying creature. "This is where they want us," Kane said softly, running a hand across the control panel. "Standing here. Remembering who won." Harper hesitated before speaking. "Sir, it's still a ship. It can still fly." Kane turned, his gaze sharp. "Not yet," Harper admitted, "but the core housing is intact. The reactor could be brought back online with the right team. We could turn their insult into something useful," Kane finished for her. There was a long pause. "This is dangerous," Harper said finally. "If we even try to reactivate this ship, the Council will know. They monitor everything." Kane's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure they can't stop us when they find out." The restoration effort began quietly. Under the guise of scientific study, Kane requested a team of engineers from Earth's dwindling research divisions. Few volunteered at first, most were too afraid of what would happen if the Council found out. But those who came aboard were the best, men and women who had designed humanity's last warships, who had sworn they would never see Earth brought to its knees again. Dr. Marcus Lee was the first breakthrough. "Admiral, you're going to want to see this," he said one night, his voice shaking with restrained excitement. Kane followed him deep into the engineering bay, where the alien reactor loomed like some ancient, slumbering beast. "This core isn't dead," Lee said, his gloved hand pressed against the glowing surface. "It's dormant. And Admiral, the technology here is centuries ahead of anything we've ever touched. This thing could power half of Earth for a decade." Kane stared at the reactor for a long time, silent. The soft green glow lit the hard lines of his face. "Bring it online," he said finally. Lee hesitated. "Sir, if we do that." "Bring it online," Kane repeated, his voice cold. "And then make sure no one outside this ship can tell we did." When the core finally awoke, the ship seemed to shudder with life. Lights flickered on in the corridors one by one, consoles came to life, and a deep, resonant hum filled the hall. Kane stood in the command chamber as the displays came online. For the first time, he could see what this ship truly was: not a gift, not a relic, but a weapon of terrifying potential. He felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since the Siege of Seoul. Hope. Later that night, Kane stood alone on the observation deck. The ship's hull glowed faintly now, alive again, no longer a corpse drifting in the dark. "This isn't a coffin anymore," Kane murmured to himself. "It's a blade." And as he turned to leave, a thought settled into his mind with the weight of iron. If the galaxy thought humanity would stay broken, they were about to be very, very wrong. The ship woke slowly, like some ancient beast rising from a 1,000-year slumber. Day by day, its dark corridors filled with light. Its engines rumbled faintly as auxiliary power came online. Screens and control panels glowed with alien symbols, their strange language slowly deciphered by a team of sleepless scientists. Admiral Kane walked the main deck often, saying little, but watching everything. Each new light, each hum of machinery brought the same thought back to him again and again: they gave us this ship to humiliate us. But they forgot who we are. The team that gathered around the project was small at first, just a handful of specialists from Earth's fractured research divisions. But as word spread, more came: engineers, coders, weapons designers, people who had hidden their skills since the Council banned human military research. They came quietly, under forged work orders and falsified research grants. To the outside world, this was an academic effort to study alien history. To those aboard the ship, it was something else entirely. A resurrection. Dr. Marcus Lee was in the reactor bay the first time the core hit full output. The air was electric, thrumming with barely contained power. "Admiral," Lee said over comms, voice tight, "you're standing inside the most advanced power plant humanity has ever touched. You could run New York City for a decade with this thing." Kane was silent for a long moment. "Can we control it?" Lee gave a faint, disbelieving laugh. "If we get another 6 months without the Council noticing what we're doing? Yes. We can control it. We can make it sing." Kane allowed himself a rare smile. "Then make it sing." Weapons were next. Javier Morales, former head of Earth's disbanded Naval Armaments Division, stood in the vast alien hangar with his team, surveying the empty weapon hardpoints. "They stripped her clean," Morales muttered, his voice a mix of awe and anger. "Main cannons, missile bays, point defense turrets, gone. They didn't just disarm her. They tried to declaw her." "Can we rebuild them?" Kane asked. Morales's grin was sharp as a knife. "Admiral, I can give you weapons the ship has never seen before." And so, piece by piece, humanity's ingenuity began to graft itself onto the alien skeleton. Hybrid weapons systems were fabricated in secret: railguns on the dorsal hull, missile pods hidden in retractable bays, and a spinal cannon jury-rigged from the ship's ancient focusing array. When it fired in a controlled test for the first time, the blast cut an asteroid into molten shards. The crew stood in stunned silence, the glow of the explosion reflecting in their helmets. "God help them," Harper whispered, "if we ever have to use this thing." But it wasn't just the ship that was changing. The crew was changing too. Colonel Sarah Trent, a former ground ops commander who had led resistance cells during the occupation years, stood with Harper in the mess hall one night, watching the engineers laugh and talk over cold rations. "They look like soldiers again," Trent said softly. Harper glanced at her. You make that sound like a bad thing. Trent shook her head. No. Just dangerous. We all swore never to fight again. The council made sure of that. But look at us now, one spark away from open war. Harper didn't answer right away. She stared through the viewport at the glowing hull outside, at the ship's silhouette against Saturn's pale rings. Maybe war was always coming, she said quietly. Maybe we just stopped pretending otherwise. It happened faster than anyone expected. 3 months into the restoration project, sensors lit up with incoming warp signatures. Multiple contacts, reported Lieutenant Reeves from the tactical station, his voice tight. 3 council cruisers, closing fast. ETA, 6 hours. They know, Harper said, her stomach dropping. Kane stood motionless for a long moment, staring at the tactical display. The red icons crawled closer with each passing second. They're coming to inspect us, Harper said. If they see what we've done, they'll dismantle it, Trent finished grimly. And they'll execute every one of us for violating treaty restrictions. The bridge was silent. Everyone waited for Kane to speak. Prepare the ship for launch, he said finally. Harper turned sharply. Admiral, we're not ready. We will never be more ready than we are right now. There was no fear in Kane's voice, only cold certainty. What happened next felt unreal. The alien Dreadnought's engines, cold for centuries, roared to life. The entire ship trembled, shuddering under its own reborn power. Reactor at 95% and climbing, Lee shouted over comms. Main drive spooling up, she's holding steady, Morales added, barely containing his grin. The lights across the ship blazed bright, banishing the tomb-like shadows. The bridge came alive with sensor feeds, targeting data, navigation readouts. For the first time since humanity had been conquered, the crew stood not as victims, but as warriors aboard a living warship. Open comms, Kane ordered. The council fleet hailed them, the alien voice dripping with false courtesy. Human vessel, you are in violation of treaty restrictions. Power down immediately and prepare for boarding. Failure to comply will result in termination. Kane's reply was ice cold. No. The first shot was almost beautiful. The spinal cannon charged with a low, rising hum, light building along its length until it released a beam of pure energy that turned the lead council cruiser into a star-bright blossom of fire. Direct hit. Morales shouted. Target destroyed. The remaining 2 cruisers scattered, launching counterfire, but the Dreadnought's alien shields flared and held. Lock on the next target, Kane ordered. Railguns thundered, spitting hypersonic slugs that tore through the second cruiser's engines, leaving it spinning helplessly. Missiles streaked after, finishing the kill. The last cruiser broke and tried to run. Track it, Harper said, voice hard. Don't let it get a signal out. The main cannon fired again, a single devastating shot. Silence followed. 3 council warships were now drifting wreckage. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Everyone stared at the tactical display, at the empty space where their enemies had been. We just killed 3 council ships, Harper said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. No, Kane said, his expression grim. We just announced to the galaxy that humanity is no longer broken. He looked around the bridge, meeting every eye. Send the message to Earth. Activate the hidden yards. We bring the fleet back online. For the first time in 10 years, there was no fear in their faces, only resolve. The monster was awake. And the galaxy would soon learn to fear it. The galaxy did not stay silent for long. The destruction of 3 council cruisers sent shockwaves across 100 star systems. Alien newsnets ran endless loops of the Dreadnought silhouette, branding it the rogue ship of Sol. Debates raged in council chambers. Words like insurrection and containment protocols filled their transmissions. Within weeks, fleets were mobilized. This is it, Commander Elise Harper said grimly, her fingers tracing the edge of the tactical table on the USS Vengeance's bridge. They won't just send a patrol this time. They'll send an armada. Good, Admiral Thomas Kane replied. His face was calm, unreadable, lit by the blue glow of the display.
Let them come. We need them to see what we've become.
The waiting was the hardest part. Earth's hidden shipyards, buried under asteroids and ice, came alive for the first time since the Siege of Seoul. Workers worked around the clock, piecing together warships from mothballed hulls and salvaged parts. Within weeks, a ragtag escort fleet was ready, half a dozen destroyers, a few refitted carriers, even a pair of missile frigates. But it was the vengeance that anchored them all, the reborn Dreadnought at the heart of humanity's resurrection. Colonel Sarah Trent watched from the hangar bay as pilots strapped into their fighters, their faces painted with the same grim determination she had seen during the occupation years. "They're scared," she admitted to Harper as they walked the deck together.
"Good," Harper said. "Fear sharpens you. Makes you harder to kill."
The alarm came without warning.
"Multiple warp signatures inbound."
Lieutenant Reeves shouted from the tactical station.
"Counting, 47 ships. Confirmed Council fleet, cruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts. They're dropping right on top of us."
"Sound battle stations," Kane ordered, his voice cutting through the sudden chaos. The lights across the ship shifted to deep red. The decks vibrated as power surged to shields and weapons. Crews sprinted to their posts, pilots dove for their fighters, engines screamed to life. Kane stood at the command chair, his presence steadying the bridge crew. "All hands," he said over ship-wide comms.
"Today, we stop running.
Today, humanity fights for its place in the stars." The first Council ships tore into real space above Titan, their formation perfect, their weapons already hot.
"Enemy fleet deploying attack screen," Harper reported.
"They're forming a wall between us and Saturn orbit." "Break the wall," Kane said. The Vengeance surged forward, her alien drives burning white-hot, flanked by the smaller human escorts. "Launch strike wings."
Colonel Trent barked into her comm. The hangar bay thundered as squadrons of fighters streaked into space, their contrails curling like white knives. The opening salvo shook the void.
The Dreadnought's main cannon fired, a blinding spear of light that vaporized the first Council cruiser before it could maneuver. The rest of the fleet returned fire, turning the space around Titan into a storm of plasma bolts and missile trails.
"Shields holding," Lee reported from engineering, sweat on his brow.
"But they're hammering us hard, Admiral." "Return everything we've got," Kane said coldly.
Railguns spat molten death, missile pods cycled and reloaded, point defense turrets stitched burning lines across enemy fighters.
One of the human destroyers exploded under a withering barrage, scattering debris across the battlefield.
Harper flinched but didn't look away.
"Vanguard lost," she said. "Then we make them pay for it," Kane replied. Colonel Trent's fighters dove into the enemy formation, screaming through flak bursts and turret fire.
"Fox 3.
Kill confirmed," a pilot shouted over comms as a missile detonated against a Council carrier's bridge. "This is Alpha 2, I'm hit," another voice cut in, panicked. "Stay with me, kid," Trent snapped, rolling her fighter to shield the rookie's retreat. She stitched cannon fire across a pursuing alien craft, sending it spinning into a fireball. When she spoke again, her voice was low, steady. "No one dies alone out here.
You hear me?"
But the Council fleet was relentless. More ships warped in, doubling their numbers. The sky seemed to burn with hostile fire.
"Admiral, we can't take this pounding forever," Harper warned, gripping the edge of her console. Kane's eyes were locked on the tactical screen. The enemy formation was tightening, herding them toward open space where they could be flanked.
"They think they have us cornered," he said quietly. Then he turned to Lee.
"Prepare the core for overload."
Lee's head snapped around. "Sir, that'll turn this ship into a miniature supernova." "If we die," Kane said, "we take every one of them with us." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at him. There was no fear in their faces now, only grim resolve. "Yes, sir," Lee said finally.
Overload sequence initiated. 1 minute to critical mass. The Vengeance turned into the center of the enemy fleet, charging headlong at their flagship.
"Target lock on their command ship," Harper said.
"Fire everything," Kane ordered. The Dreadnought's guns screamed, tearing through cruisers and frigates like paper.
Fighters swarmed in behind them, launching coordinated torpedo runs that turned Council carriers into expanding fireballs.
And then, suddenly, the enemy began to break. Multiple ships jumping out. Reeves shouted, "They're retreating!"
One by one, the Council fleet fled the system, abandoning their dead, abandoning Titan, abandoning the battle. The void fell silent except for the hiss of combs and the hum of Vengeance's engines. Core at 98%, Lee warned.
"We're seconds from going critical."
"Shut it down," Kane said.
Lee's hands flew across the controls.
The reactor whined, then gradually quieted, power levels dropping back to stable.
"We live," Lee said softly.
"No," Kane said, his voice carrying across the bridge.
"We do more than live. We rise." 3 months later, the Galactic Council sued for peace.
There would be no surrender from Earth this time, no dismantling of fleets, no occupation.
Instead, humanity was recognized as a sovereign power, with its own seat on the Council, its fleets unshackled. The USS Vengeance became more than a ship.
It became a symbol, a reminder to every species in the galaxy that Earth was no longer to be pitted, feared, or contained. Standing once more on the observation deck, Kane stared at the stars. The Dreadnought floated silently beyond the viewport, gleaming in the light of Saturn. "They gave us a coffin," Kane murmured, more to himself than anyone else.
"We made it a throne."
He turned to Harper, who stood quietly at his side. "Signal to the Council," Kane said.
"Yes, sir." "What message?"
Kane's gaze never left the stars. "Tell them," he said, "never again."